They're put into an unfamiliar room and locked in a small, barren cage. This alone is terrifying to a young monkey.
Because she was captured wild in Africa, we will never know just where or when Washoe was born.
Ever since I found out about ape research, I've been, let's say, interested about the topic of post-anthropocentrism, even if I didn't know the word for it back then. Learning about the different apes like Koko, Washoe, and Nim, how they were taught, and more importantly, how they were treated, was a big influence on the way I think about the world today. There is no hiding the facts that these apes were treated poorly. Being used as test subjects in tight enclosures, being forced to do tasks for food, and in general just being a subject to our wills and whimsy. Never much care went into understanding the apes on their terms, their conditions, and their existence. These experiments reeked of human-centric ideals that never sat well with me. My thesis is called Creating Effective Grief from Non-Human Perspectives in Interactive Works. That's the working title at least, and my idea is that speculative fabulation, as explained by Donna Haraway, is a perfect way for artists and practical researchers to speculate on futures and non-human actants in a way that with proper care and ethics is not only safe and respectful to the non-human actant, but can also help us better understand our fellow Earth inhabitants. It is important that I am not aiming to create a facsimile here. To believe I could inhabit these actants' minds and truly understand them is folly. But you can speculate, and you can gain understanding from creating fiction and engaging with said fiction. Much like an ethical quandary formed in the minds of a Star Trek writer has engaged the minds of youth across the planet, so I want to engage, but in a more academic sense.
Prove to the court that I am sentient.
This is absurd. We all know you're sentient.
So I am sentient, but Commander Data is not.
That's right.
Why?
This is going to be a practice-led research project, so I will be creating works of interactive art as a way to ask questions about what it might mean to grieve as a non-human actant. And how can digital interactive works create effective spaces for that grief? Not to create a reproduction, but to evoke thoughts about our shared multi-species existence. Using a mix of field research on animal actants, artistic interpretations, grief study, and affective theory, I will use a general-purpose engine like that of Construct 3 or Unity, and possibly more niche engines like Twine or Bitsy, to create narratives that explore the aspect of non-human grief. Every tool shapes the thesis, process, and outcome, so to use different engines will give me a way to relationally analyze the different works to gain a better understanding of how the tools affected the end result. This will draw heavily upon Latour's actor network theory as a basis for my framework, expanded upon by Donna Haraway to reject a human-centric model of thought in favor of a web-like understanding of how we act and are acted upon. As Haraway writes, we are compost, not post-human, meaning we are not above anything else. In due time, we are all eventual meals for something else. It will draw upon Van Doren's book Flightways to understand animal mourning rituals and potential showings of grief. The last chapter about Hawaiian crows seemingly gathering around fallen comrades, either as a way to learn or as a way to grieve, will be a large inspiration for at least one of the works I plan on creating. The idea of the mourning ritual as a signifier for grief, much like a footprint signifies a foot, though I will make it clear, a footprint doesn't mean there was a foot. They're not the same thing, but when it comes to animal research, these extrapolations are some of the ways we can speculate and try to understand non-human actants. Judith Butler will be a valuable resource for asking the questions of whose lives are grievable, especially in context of ape research, which started my interest. It is interesting how we frame grief as human in media. I take inspiration from Tsing et al.'s interactive narrative project Feral Atlas, which visualizes and contextualizes field reports and research about how human industrialization impacts animals, plants, and fungi. It is a blend of poignant, artistic impression and research that shows how powerful practice-led research can be. Another inspiration I will draw from is Linda Kraut's The Songbird Speaks, which uses AI to categorize birdsong, from which she created poetry. The work makes use of speculative fabulation, wherein the goal was not to accurately portray exactly what the birdsong meant to the bird, but to interpret poetically the songbird's call, so that we can gain knowledge and understanding. The third work of art that this thesis draws from is Shelter. Shelter is a game about a badger mother trying to protect and herd her kids through the perils of being prey. You navigate a world of predators and wildfire. The thing that is so important about Shelter, in relation to my work, is that it is a post-anthropocentric game. No humans or dialogue, just you playing as a badger, interacting with the environment. Be it playing in the foliage, herding your young, escaping predators, or dodging wildfire, there are no imposed human lenses. Another thing that Shelter is an example of is effective environment creation. You're implored to experience life as this critter, both the ups and downs, but also the human-made disaster of wildfire. In this sense, Shelter, whether intended or unintended by the developers, is a game that tries to get you to think about what we do to the planet. My works will fall somewhere in between these works. I want to create an effective environment and story, but I also want to interpret and poeticize these non-human experiences. And I also want to incorporate the data and research from books like Flightways in the same way Feral Atlas does. I think this combinatory process will yield results that further the field. My goal is to contribute to the environmental humanities by merging interactive art and more than human ethics, to treat mourning not only as an expression of emotion, but also as an act of resistance and politics to the injustices of the rest of our planet. I want those who play my games to be exposed to their own biases and anthropocentric view models, to gain better understanding of the non-human actants around us, and to come away from the experience with more empathy and affection. Over the next 2 semesters, I will be alternating between researching and reading, prototyping and documenting, writing in a journal, taking screenshots and recording, while I closely work with my supervisor to create these 3 works. By the end, I will have 3 complete works of art that all in some way explore non-human grief, that will be analyzed and reflected on, and in the end, whatever I find from my research, I will be honest and transparent about my findings, even if I fail at my hopeful goal. This type of research is important. In a world so ever more egocentric and obsessed with growth over ethics, any voice that shouts back against the inherently corrupting incentives and narratives are worth the weight in pats on the back. I want to contribute to an area of research that can hopefully, with enough voices and time, influence the way we think and feel about our home and our fellow Earthlings. So I see you all next semester.